everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So for today's video, I just wanted to go through a passage from the Gospel of Mark where Jesus and his disciples were on a boat and were unexpectedly hit by a storm. And the key thing that I want to focus on here is the disciples' faith and how it applies to us today. So when we read from Mark chapter 4 from verses 35 to 41, it says, "That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let us go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care if we drown?' He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, 'Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?' They were terrified and asked each other, 'Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him.'" So how many of us feel that we are constantly overwhelmed by the intensity of the storms in our lives, or feel that we are constantly being tossed back and forth by the waves of this world? It's so easy to think that once we walk in a relationship with the Lord, that whatever path we choose to follow will run smoothly. But just because we have a relationship with the Lord, that doesn't mean we won't face trials and storms in our lives, because that is what ultimately tests our faith. So we see here in the first few verses, as Jesus and his disciples were leaving and heading on into the boat to sail to the other side, the disciples had no idea of the terrible storm that was about to take place along their journey. Since they were physically present with Jesus, they probably did not anticipate any sort of trouble along the way. But in verses 37 to 38, it says, "A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care if we drown?'" Just as these disciples were on the boat with Jesus and were unexpectedly hit with this storm, the disciples were fearful, since they were still conditioned by the world, because as fishermen, they spent a good portion of their lives in the sea to understand the intensity of the storm around them. So we see here that not only was the storm on the outside around them, but also on the inside within them. The waves breached the borders of their minds, and they became distressed inside, and they thought they were going to drown, so much so that they woke up Jesus and he said, "Peace, be still." Not only did Jesus calm the natural, but also the internal. In James 1 verse 6, it actually says that the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. And then verse 8 describes the person as being double-minded and unstable in all they do, which perfectly describes the disciples in this situation. Even though Jesus was physically present with them in the boat, they still failed to remember the countless miracles that Jesus had performed all throughout their journey with them. They still failed to recognize the Creator who created the wind and the waves all of a sudden when they were hit with the storm. It was so easy for the disciples to trust in Jesus when everything was flowing smoothly, but instead of continuing to trust in Jesus, when they were hit with this obstacle, they began to doubt. Similar to this situation, we react in the same way as the disciples did by allowing the waves to breach our faith in God when we face challenges. We go through some great seasons where we feel that our confidence in the Lord is very high, but we also go through some tough seasons where we feel the storms of this life weighing us down, so much so that we begin to doubt God. We put our focus on the big waves or the big hurdles in our lives, or we listen to the wind or the voices around us, forgetting that God is with us even through the worst storms in our lives. And sometimes through our struggles, we imagine what the disciples saw Jesus as he was sleeping in the boat with them during the storm. We look up to God as though he is in a similar state during the tough seasons in our lives, and we think that he doesn't see us going through these tough situations. We lose faith. Instead of realizing that the Lord is right beside us, we believe that Jesus is sleeping through the storms, not caring, but that is completely wrong. Jesus asks an important question here to his disciples. Do you still have no faith? Even with all the miracles that they saw Jesus performing, do they still have no faith that Jesus is with them during the storm? And that's the question that we need to ask ourselves in our own lives. Even when the Lord has carried us through the different trials and tribulations, and we're faced with a new one that's even bigger, are we still going to trust in God, or are we going to be swayed by the wind and the waves of this world? Because the power that Jesus used to calm the seas, He will use to calm the storms that attack you each day. That is why we need to hold on to the one who created the wind and the waves in the first place. We need to trust that the Lord is in control of every situation in our lives. So that is all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and if this video encourages you, please feel free to share this video to encourage someone else. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope you all have a blessed day.